'93 when it came out, and it blew my mind. It cracked open my skull and blew my brains everywhere. So it just it with everything Spielberg and the filmmakers were able to achieve with that film, and making it horrific and funny, but also thrilling. It just really stuck with me and showed me the possibilities of film. A film that showed me the possibilities of what I could do as just me was Clerks, where it's, Kevin Smith's conversational comedy. And that was a movie I saw that I said, oh, hey, I could actually maybe pull this off or do something like this. It's not as big as Jurassic Park, obviously. It's just people talking. And it seemed a little more accessible. So those are my two picks of films.
When did you start shooting films? Were you a teenager, like in Super 8, doing your thing?
I was actually I think I was in 7th or 8th grade. So right before becoming a teenager, I made my sister act in them. And I did I did a Godzilla film with toys where I just smashed a Lego city and stuff. So that was like my first foray into filmmaking.
Interesting. And you've just never stopped, I take it.
Yeah. I like you said, I went to Avon in Indiana, the Avon High School, and they had a film festival every semester. So it gave me a reason to make things, and I've just kind of kept that mindset ever since, where I'm just always working on something or writing ideas or trying to get something done.
Okay, very good, very good.
Yeah.
Thank you. You've kicked us off well. Does anyone else have to share with us what they what movie got them going on this career?
I'll go.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I was pleased to get to be reached out to do this panel, because I actually was just thinking about this very thing pretty recently, and I was thinking about how important it is not just what movies you see, but when you see them, and how certain movies that, I can't tell you how many times I've seen a movie and thought, oh man, 16-year-old Henry would have thought this was the greatest thing of all time. But unfortunately, I'm not 16 anymore, so I can't appreciate it like I would have then. And, I remember like the first time seeing a 70s movie. This isn't my answer, but like the first 70s movie I saw was Deer Hunter, and I think I was like 13, and I was like, what is this? This isn't like anything like I remember from other movies. And I think my theory, which is untested, is that the sweet spot of film viewing, of how it can influence you, is like 15, 16, 17. And this is going to expose my youth, but I was right in the middle of that sweet spot in 2007, when 4 of my favorite movies of all time came out, like back to back to back to back. And those movies are No Country for Old Men, Zodiac, The Assassination of Jesse James, and There Will Be Blood. And that was like seeing all those movies. And I mean, I'm biased, of course, but I think you could make the argument that all 4 of those movies are like 4 of the best movies ever made. And every year since 2007 for me has been a disappointment because I don't think anything has ever topped it. And I'm sure it has, but the important thing is nothing has made me feel like those movies had. And I think it was because I was like 15, 16 years old when I saw them. And it was like a clear shift in taste for me, because I remember going into that year thinking that Spider-Man 3 was going to be the greatest movie of all time, and thinking that Pirates of the Caribbean was going to be amazing, the third Pirates of the Caribbean. And then I got completely blindsided by these 4 movies that completely changed my view of what a movie could be. And all those movies, specifically Zodiac remains to be probably my favorite movie of all time. And I don't understand how it works, because it shouldn't work. It's like a 3-hour movie about a case that hasn't even been solved. You spend some time with a cartoonist who's trying to figure out what happened, but he doesn't figure out what happened. I mean, it's a true story, so it's okay. And somehow it ended up being one of the most thrilling movies I've ever seen. And the precision of David Fincher as a director is something that I hope to one day, I don't know. I obviously am never going to be as good as David Fincher or the Coen brothers or PTA or anything, but it's something to look, to strive toward. So that 2007 for me was a big year, and I hope one day I will see a movie that will make me as happy to be a film watcher as those 4 movies.
That's interesting. And how many times did you say you've seen Zodiac? Is that,
Oh,
are you a rewatcher?
Oh yeah, I rewatch movies over and over again. I think I probably watch it 10 times a year, honestly. It's
okay.
And I also, it's a movie I show people a lot too, and it's something that Zodiac and No Country for Old Men are both movies that I put on just in the background a lot too. If I'm doing the dishes or vacuuming or something. I can't do it as much anymore because I have 2 little children, but yeah, those 2 movies are my most rewatched movies, and they never get old. And you also, with Fincher and the Coen brothers, something about them is that you notice something new every time you see their movies. Because they, their attention to detail is unlike any other. And the Coen brothers never waste a line of dialogue. Every line is the most brilliant line of dialogue ever written. I speak in hyperbole, of course, but I think there are a lot of people that would agree with that. I would hope.
Yeah, they really are. So how often, just jump back to you, Ronald, do you rewatch Jurassic Park and Clerks? Are they sort of on the...
Jurassic Park, yeah, I probably watch once a year. Clerks, I haven't watched in full in a while. Probably late college. It's been a minute since I revisited that one. But I've revisited the making of a lot more recently because it's just interesting to hear how they were able to make the film. There's a documentary on one of the DVD Blu-rays. It shows you how they did it and the resources they were able to tap into, and it's pretty inspirational. So I've probably watched that more recently than the actual film. Yeah, but Jurassic Park is a once a year at least for me. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, Ron, I think the Jurassic Park would be a third, like a number 3 on movies I've seen the most in my life. Yeah. That was my favorite movie of all time, probably until 2007.
Good call.
And then it's got blown out of the water. It's kind of like your 1967. They say that film really changed in 1967.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, both of you. Love to I've got lots of questions I want to come back to. So, but I want to keep pushing through and make sure that we get everyone's first thoughts. So, who's the next volunteer?
I'll talk.
Okay.
The film that changed my perception of movies was Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, which weirdly has had a bit of a renaissance in the last few months. It's a movie that I watch an amount, but I discovered it when I was a kid. I think I was like 13 or 14 when I saw it on HBO, and I remember thinking of all the movies that I had seen previous to that, which I like to flatter myself and think that I had a pretty diverse viewing habit. We always had HBO and Cinemax and Showtime and always had access to all these movies. A lot of people talk about the theater experience as being their primary memory of exploring and discovering movies. Mine was always television. Although we did go to the theater, once a week, every other week, something like that. Actually, one thing we used to do, there's a movie theater in Indianapolis. I grew up in Indianapolis. That's at 86th and Michigan, and all the center. It was a Lowe's, but like you go in, and all the movie theaters were on a single hallway that would go down. So we would just get dropped off at like 10 or whatever the first screening was, and nobody would pay attention. My brother and I, these 2 kids, just kind of walking through, and whatever was on roughly next, we'd always sneak into. But Do the Right Thing, I remember thinking more than anything else that it was the first textural feeling I ever saw in a movie, that it was the first time I ever felt the fact that the movie was set in an environment that was warm. and you could feel how hot it was outside. And I was really turned on by that. I was also really turned on by the fact that it's one of the funniest movies I think I'd ever seen. And then one of the most horrifying things I'd ever seen as well. And that turn, as you get older, you realize how really tough that is. It's really tough to make that turn and actually have it matter in a way that the audience follows you down the path of. That movie stays with me for a lot of different reasons, but that's definitely one of the big reasons. And if there were to be a second film, I would probably say there was a film from 1977 called Slapshot, which is one of the dirtiest movies I'd ever seen when I was 14. And that one I watched that's one that I watch pretty regularly. And then that one, again, the griminess of the world matters as much as anything to do with the story. And I've always been fascinated with movies. I think it's one of the reasons why as I've gotten older, I've gotten more and more and more into David Lynch, is that the feeling of the thing matters a whole lot more than the think of it. And that's really the most important thing in some of these movies that really affected me in my youth.
That's really interesting. Yeah. So it just was helping you really form in your mind, like, what's a powerful way to tell these stories, right? It
makes them three-dimensional.
Yeah.
In a way that so many things that I had seen up to that point, I think, to this day, I can still quote, I can recite Wayne's World and Ghostbusters from memory, but other than the comedy of it, they're sort of flat in that way. I don't really feel like I was ever a part of any of those worlds. I just remember them and love them. These other things that as I experienced them, like especially Do the Right Thing, there was something really tangible about that movie that was so much more than just something you laughed at and then you went and did something else.
Yeah, like I like what you said. It was textural, like you could really
that's cool.
feel it. Yeah. And is it like a rewatchable, like a once a year rewatchable, or like as you're working, is it like inspiration? You kind of go back and as you're working on it?
I watched it. The last time I watched it, actually, I was here in the UK, which is really funny. I can't tell you enough that if you come to the United Kingdom, watch the most American movie you can find in a cinema with a British audience, because they are really flummoxed by the weirdest parts of the story. Like, there was something that they responded to earlier on in the movie. There was like a gasp of something. I think it was a word that somebody used. And I remember thinking, they're going to choke a dude to death. Like, just give it an hour. Like, we'll get much worse than this. You guys are gasping way too early. Save your oxygen. So it's something that I watch maybe once a year, maybe a little more. I think if it's on, it's one of those movies that it's harder and harder to find as his movies become more like, he is in his own way this like alternate reality Scorsese, right? And like he's made a lot more movies, and a lot more of his movies have made a lot more money. So it's easier to find The Inside Man or Crooklyn or his new one,
The Five
Bloods or Black Klansman. All of those movies made a lot more money than Do the Right Thing. But again, if it's on, it's totally going to watch, I mean, my like Everything Stops movie is, someone was talking about earlier, is Fast Times at Ridgemont High. That's hard to be somewhere where it's not playing on some streaming service. Do the Right Thing is not in that camp, unfortunately.
Yeah, interesting. Allison, what about you?
So my two favorite films are The Thin Blue Line, Errol Morris's documentary, and The Royal Tenenbaums, which is Wes Anderson's. But I think for me, what really shocked me about the Thin Blue Line was that, it just was groundbreaking at the time in terms of the way it approached documentary storytelling. And it almost had this really cinematic narrative feel to it. You know, like at the time, the National Society of Film Critics thought it was the best documentary of the year, but the Academy, the Oscars, refused to consider it because it was just, they thought the reenactments were too fictional. But yeah, it took all of the elements that you would have traditionally seen at the time in a narrative filmmaking approach. And, you know, like they had Philip Glass did the soundtrack, and everything was like very aestheticized, and it just kind of broke that genre wide open and made people think about new ways that you could approach documentary storytelling. And then also it had a profound impact on the criminal justice system. As, I don't want to give away too much, but by the end, you know who the killer is, which was groundbreaking that, you know, Errol Morris figured out who the killer was while he was filming. So, and then with Wes Anderson and the Royal Tenenbaums, I think that's one of his best films, along with Isle of Dogs, the animated.
Especially if you're a dog lover.
She's actually right here.
Oh.
But yeah, I think that one, I think there are a lot of actually similarities between Errol Morris in some ways, parallels between Errol Morris and Wes Anderson, in that they take this like really quirky, stylized approach to their storytelling. And I loved the Royal Tenenbaums because it was kind of like Gene Hackman's swan song. You know, like Wes Anderson specifically wrote that film for Gene Hackman, and then Gene Hackman was really reluctant to do it because it didn't pay much by his standards, and actually, you know, it ended up being one of his best roles, in my opinion. But but yeah, just these really profoundly quirky characters. Everything's very dysfunctional, very highly stylized, amazing cast. You know, you had Angelica Houston, Gwyneth Paltrow, Ben Stiller, the Owen Wilson and his brother Luke Wilson. Was just, it's perfect on all levels.
Yeah, he really did.
I could wax poetic about those films for a long time.
You know, Allison, what you were saying about Errol Morris and the Thin Blue Line, I think that people are coming to documentaries because there is so much art and craft in them now. They're not just a history, you're just a boring talking heads. And they think he was so critical in showing that true artistry in storytelling, in true storytelling, is just fascinating and essential, really. I mean, when you think about what is used now in the craft of making documentary films, you know, he was just getting started, you know, in what people did with it.
He's still breaking all sorts of barriers with his storytelling. You know, like Wormwood is another example. And that was another one where the Academy refused to consider it in the documentary genre because of how immersive the reenactments were. It really blends narrative and documentary. But yeah, he's always at the cutting edge, in my opinion.
Yeah, he really is. And reenactments are controversial. And I if I'm programming, when I program documentaries, I you know, they got to be good. You know, you really have to. You can't just you can't cheat on that part. So yeah.
They could go bad very quickly.
They can. I mean, they can be really cheesy and really take you out of it, rather than it being very seamless and helping you understand what you can't see because it's in the past. So
that was another thing really quickly about the Thin Blue Lines reenactments, is that it was, you know, I was reading up about it afterwards, and his approach to reenactments isn't so much about showing you the truth of what happened. It's about showing you the different perspectives that each person had, so their version of the truth. And so that, in a way, is different than the traditional, you know, reenactments that you would have seen on the History Channel or something like that. It's a reenactment of the perspective of whoever was telling that particular part of the story.
Right, which was so essential to getting to the point of why he made the film. Yeah. Beth, last but very much not least.
For me, I'm going to choose a director. Is David Sutherland, and he did 2 films that actually a teacher recommended when I was at school in California, and she was like, I think you would really love him, and she was right. And it was he did The Farmer's Wife, and then he did Country Boys, and he's done some other things as well. He's completely insane because he spends like 4 or 5 years following one person or topic or something, and I love that. Like he lives their lives with them. You see everything. Like in The Farmer's Wife, like he was in their house, like they were gonna get a divorce, and you saw it, you know, like, and he, you know, like besides the farming and everything, it was like you saw him like kids doing their homework and, you know, just normal stuff, but he showed it in such like this gorgeous, beautiful way. And I was like, oh, I can do this. You know, it was just sort of this thing because it was just so simple. It didn't have to be so stylized. It didn't have to be so gorgeous. You know, you could just do it. And so even though, you know, you want things to be beautiful and stylized and beautiful, but like, I don't know, it was just, and I love how he gives the people that he follows so much respect and empathy. And that was something that I really loved too. And he takes such simple things and makes them like gorgeous and beautiful in a different way. And yeah, I just really love him. And I got to meet him and it was amazing. And yeah, I was like, I couldn't speak to him for like 2 seconds. And then I was like word vomited on him. And so, and he was lovely. He couldn't have been nicer about it. And now we are Facebook friends. So hey. I think I have arrived. No, just kidding. Yeah. So, and the movie that I stopped for is The Princess Bride. And yeah. And also Love and Basketball. Those 2 movies I love a lot. So yeah.
Guys, I'm glad you brought up the feeling of I can do this. I feel like that's a really important type of movie for filmmakers. I think, you know, Clerks, Ron, I think that's probably an I can do this movie. And Allison, you mentioned you're talking about Wes Anderson. Bottle Rocket was one of those for me. And not that I could, you know, it's not a sense of I could make that movie. He was this young when he made it and he pulled this off. I can do that too. I mean, sometimes you see, you know, I think Paul Thomas Anderson was 27 when he made Boogie Nights, and that makes me feel like I'm a horrible director. But like something like Bottle Rocket, that feels tangible, right? Something like Clerks, that feels tangible. And those are important moments, I think, in watching movies. I don't know if you guys want to bounce off that or anything.
Yeah, I mean, it takes audacity, doesn't it? You look at that and think the audacity, like what did Wes Anderson at that point, or what did Kevin Smith, you know? So yeah, I'd be curious to know how do you feel like that's what has spoken to you in these films or in other films? Like, what was your way in? I guess that's, you know, did you just pick up a camera? Were you this impressionable age, middle school, high school? Like, what was it that really was that way in?
I mean, I think for me personally, I became a bit at the beginning of, like, you know, when you actually, I think everybody was in high school making things and it was fun. And then you get a little older and then you think, okay, well, let's make something that's longer than 45 seconds or 2 minutes or something like that. And I was lucky enough, and it sounds like all of us were lucky enough to be kind of coming of age during the digital editing revolution. So it was a lot easier to get things made. The hard part, I would say that the one thing that I found myself sort of arrested by was the sort of, not hero worship, but you get into this place where you do see, you know, Paul Thomas Anderson's first movie was called Hard Eight, and it's a funky movie, and it's you know, it's one of those things where it doesn't look like somebody who's 25. And so when you're 22 and you see that, kind of arrests you a little bit, like, well, I guess I'm going to go fuck off now because I can't do that. That's not me, man.
Yeah,
like, that is so good. And then you look at, like, you know, Blood Simple, and you look at all these movies, and there's like this tendency to think of that as sort of this weird gold standard that you have to sort of get to. And I think the freest moment is realizing once you've made anything, you're good. You know, like, there's all these things that kind of coalesce to make whatever it is that you're going to make. Fubar was a project that I read a story the day after I found out that my business partner was going to have a kid. And I thought, well, I better figure something out because he's not going to be available to do a lot of stuff anymore. So I picked up a Vonnegut book that I had bought, found this story, emailed the people from the Vonnegut library about getting hooked up with a lawyer, and off we went. That process seemed so like up here when I was younger that these movies that I was sort of in love with kind of made me feel like it was a much more like nebulous concept, that there was no way I was ever going to see him. And it's like that question, this is a really nerdy thing, I apologize. It's like that question in High Fidelity. Do pop songs make me depressed, or am I depressed because I listen to pop songs? And there's like a sense of that with these movies because they're so wonderful and they're so amazing, and you attach so much to them that you get to the other side and make something for yourself, and you think, well, that's, who knows the hell they went through to get to what they got to. I mean, again, Paul Thomas Anderson had to steal the print from his movie from the distributor so that he could FedEx it to Cannes and get in his cut at the risk of being sued for millions of dollars. So who knows what it is that we all go through, but man, these movies, that it is a double-edged sword, that we all love them, but they're so good that it's very easy to get like lost in the achievement.
But clearly all of you, I mean, we're talking to you because that didn't stop you. We're not talking to, you know, the 1,000 other people who were put off by that, who said, well, I couldn't do that. So what is that? Like, what is that, I guess, that audacity? Is it just that you picked up a camera or your iPhone or whatever at an impressionable age and you've just never stopped? What is that? Why are you sitting here with films under your belt instead of just, you know, watching these other filmmakers go, whoa, you know, I could never do that?
I think it's ignorance of how difficult it was going to be.
Yes.
And then once you're in the thick of it, you feel like, at least I felt like, I can't quit now. Get it done.
How old were you when you first started making films, Allison?
I was in my, let's see. Well, so I started out as a newspaper reporter. So that's what I did straight out of college. And then eventually when I saw that newspapers, there was no future in them, I transitioned to film. So I did not come to it in high school. I originally took it through a very like journalistic approach to storytelling. So yeah, I only started making films. I mean, my first film didn't come out until 2013. And that was, again, one of those films where I didn't realize how difficult it was going to be. And if I had realized that beforehand, I would have been much more frightened and put off about it. But yeah, I think I think the more and more I start to learn about filmmaking or learn how to do it, the further away I get from a journalistic approach per se. And I think that's one of the things I love about Errol Morris and Wes Anderson is they just kind of let their freak flag fly, you know. They just kind of do their own thing and it really works. It's not like a traditional journalistic approach to filmmaking.
That's interesting. What about someone else?
I was in high school when YouTube first came out, and I remember I stumbled upon YouTube for the first time because I was trying to find episodes of Dragon Ball Z, and it took me to YouTube, and I started looking through it, and I told my friend about it, and I said, hey, my parents have this. No, it was his parents that had a camcorder. We had like a mini DV camcorder, and I said, hey, you can just put stuff on here. And we went, and he came over to my house with another friend, and we made this horrible 10-minute film. And I won't even call it a film, but a video. And we put it on YouTube. And I remember the next day we were showing it to people at school, and they're like, how did you get on YouTube? Did they pay you? Did they have to like pick you up for distribution or something? And we were like, yeah, man. Yeah. We had to go through this huge process, and it was crazy, but yeah, we finally got on. Yeah. And they quickly found out we were fools, but and then we just kept on making those films, videos for YouTube. And I think that kind of continued in college. And I went to DePaul University in Greencastle, and it was an amazing place, but there wasn't a film program. There was a film studies program, but there wasn't a film production program. But there were plenty of people that still wanted to make movies. So, and my producing partner, we met at DePaul, and then one of my other close friends, who's a filmmaker who produced my first movie, also went to DePaul, and we were both just like, all three of us, we were just people that, we just wanted to go off and make stuff, and there wasn't really a medium for it or an outlet for it, but we still found a way to do it because nobody told us that we couldn't do it. And I think that's, I like how you bring up, Allison, like, we didn't know how hard it was going to be. And looking back at all these things, and I can't believe that we ever pulled it off. And if I had known what it was going to take, I probably would have said, no, it sounds like a waste of time. But I'm glad that you don't have that perspective when you're making it.
When did you cross the Rubicon from making videos to, oh wow, I've made a film? Like when was that?
Oh, man.
When did you realize that?
I don't think I can say that about anything I made until my first feature film. And I made that right out of college, and I still am somewhat ashamed of that movie, but I also am very proud that we made it. But yeah, that was another thing that I was trying to make, like with my friend Alex, who's another filmmaker, and he's way more successful than I am. But he, I said, hey, let's make a movie with our friends for like $1,000. And he was like, okay. And then the next day he called me back and he said, hey, I have $20,000. We're going to make this. And then it became, that movie, but then, we started developing, and then that money went away, but we still kept on pushing forward to try to make it still. And then eventually started finding more, and we just, lit a fire under our booties and kept moving. And yeah, I mean, it was a silly thing to try to do, but I'm glad we did it.
Yeah. Like what Allison was saying, if you had known that, you wouldn't have perhaps stepped in that pond.
Do you know the Ray Eames quote? If you knew how hard I'd work, you wouldn't call what I do wonderful.
No, I don't know that, but
that's really good. I've not heard that before. Yeah. But Ronald or Beth, like where did that audacity come from? Where did you feel that you could, that you weren't intimidated by, Paul Thomas Anderson or some of these people who just make it look so easy?
Go ahead, Beth. You can answer first, Beth, if you'd like.
Well, for me, I started in college. It was actually a class. I was not meant to do this. I was a writer. I had a degree in journalism, and then went to Brooks to do photography. But their program was half video, year and a half video, year and a half photography. And so when we got to the video, I was like, oh God. But everything clicked when I started taking video classes. And so I did this project in Alaska, and a teacher said, you need to turn this into a full doc. And I was like, how and why and where? And so that's where I began, is just through that project. And I was very lucky in that project. Got into some festivals and I got other work through that. But it was just plainly just through a class is how I did it. I wish I had a more dramatic tale to tell, but that was.
But it's neat that someone saw something in what you had done and encouraged you, and you went for it instead of saying, well, no, that's not me, or that's too hard, or, you know, I don't know how I'm going to do this. You went for it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was like in the middle, I hated it, you know, and I still like, I don't know if anyone else has this, but it's like when I finish something, I can't look at it for like a while. I hate it. Like I see all the flaws in it. And, but now I look at it and I really do appreciate it. And I love, her name was Karin, she was my teacher, and she really put me on this path. So yeah, she was awesome.
Yeah.
As for me, the audacity probably comes from my mother, who told me I was the greatest young man that she had ever known or met. So I thought I could do anything. But originally, I really enjoy storytelling, and I've always enjoyed writing and telling stories. And originally, I wanted to be a cartoonist, and I would draw cartoons all the time when I was a kid, and I realized how difficult it can be to animate.
Oh, gosh,
and I was like,
yes.
I need something way less difficult. Obviously, there's equal issues with filmmaking with real people, but it's issues I don't mind tackling. In high school, especially when you're trying to rely on other high schoolers to be actors, that's a real pain in the ass, because they'll never show up. You know that they slept in that day, or took a nap, or had homework to do, or whatever. But I don't know. I just always wanted to be a storyteller, and this platform, this art form, is kind of what fit me best in order to tell the stories.
At what point, as I asked Henry, like, at what point did you feel like you had crossed over from you were just making videos with your friends to like, well, this is film?
Probably like he said, probably my first feature film,
Okay.
Which we were able to get distributed. I shot in Indianapolis right after I moved here to Austin. And it does have some technical issues I wish now that I could go back and fix. But as a starting point like that, like I went to college for film, but that was really my film school, like getting on that set and figuring it out and doing the budgeting and sound. Sound is so fun. And all of that kind of came together with that film.
I want to make sure we get to some of our questions. And Henry, you mentioned, of course, No Country for Old Men and just the brilliance of the Coen brothers. Somebody wants to know, do you have any other favorite Coen brothers movies?
Oh, yeah. I think one of the ones that is super underrated is Inside Llewyn Davis. I think every movie that they've ever made, you could make the argument that it's the best movie, I think. The one that's really stuck with me is Inside Llewyn Davis. And another movie that, kind of like I was saying with Zodiac, is that it shouldn't work. I mean, it shouldn't be as interesting as it is, because it's just about a guy that, is moving from couch to couch, and there's a cat in it, and he has a guitar, and he gets punched in the, like, it's just like, if I told you the plot of that movie, it would sound like the most boring movie of all time, but it's somehow one of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen. And, that movie, that's another frequent rewatch. I love Inside Llewyn Davis a lot.
Interesting, because he really basically kind of ends up at the beginning.
Yeah, it's like a broken record. Like, it starts over. Yeah.
It's not a narrative arc. It was like a narrative 360.
My other favorite is A Serious Man. That movie is incredible, and Michael Stuhlbarg is he should be in every movie ever, I think. Yeah, that's a great movie.
Somebody wants to know, Allison, are there other documentary filmmakers that have influenced you beyond Errol Morris in your work? And I guess I could say any of you who have or hope to keep making documentaries.
Let me think on that one a second.
Okay,
Caught me
okay.
a little off guard. If you could circle back to me.
Beth, do you have are there other, I mean, you mentioned David Sutherland. Are there others that have really influenced you?
Well, Errol Morris and, oh my gosh.
I'm putting you on the spot. I know.
I don't know the director is the problem.
What's the film?
The one about Dr. Ruth was amazing. And also RGB was also amazing too. I think they were made by the same company. I could be wrong. But those were great. So.
Yeah, I'm trying to, I mean, I've seen them both and I'm trying to remember the filmmaker. I would be pulling up IMDb right now if I, if I wasn't afraid of losing my focus. Anybody else coming to mind? Allison or?
Werner Herzog, I think, is really interesting, really fascinating, very strange.
Yeah.
But all, you know, and the way he inserts himself in his documentaries, he's one of the few I think that can pull that off. Yeah, he really sticks out for me. As far as, gosh, there's some other really weird ones. I'm trying to think here now. Oh, what is her name? Lucy Walker, I think, is really.
Oh, I love Lucy Walker. She's so good. And she takes on such a diverse, you know, every film is just such a different topic. I love her work. Yeah.
Gosh, and somebody, I just saw it a couple years ago and now it's eluding me, but I'll
okay.
If I think about it again, I'll tell you the name of it. There were a couple of great ones that came out just within the past couple years. For Sama was really good. And then also I thought One Child Nation was pretty good by Nan-Fu Wang. So yeah, I think there are a lot of great younger filmmakers, especially female filmmakers out there now in the documentary genre that are finally getting their due.
Yeah, there are some really good women, particularly women of color that are telling, you know, such great, strong stories that have not been told. I have to thank Neil at IndyFilm Fest. Julie Cohen and Betsy West did RGB, and they were just a fabulous pair. And then Ryan White directed Ask Dr. Ruth, which was a fascinating film because I thought I knew who Dr. Ruth was.
A sniper. I mean, Dr. Ruth was a sniper. All that we need to know. That was the most amazing thing.
Yeah, just amazing, just amazing. So I am curious to know, what are you working on now? Like what's the next project? Because what we're seeing, you guys are done with, right? You've been putting them in festivals and all that, but you've moved on. So I'm curious to know, like, what are you working on? What's on your mind these days?
I'm working on my first feature documentary, and it's a story about an art heist. So it really is my chance to kind of merge Errol Morris and Wes Anderson, and it's about this really wacky theft of a Willem de Kooning painting in 1985 from a very small museum in Arizona. A man and woman entered the museum day after Thanksgiving. They walked out he sliced the painting out of its frame. They walked out, disappeared into the desert, basically. And then in 2017, a widow died in a very small town in New Mexico. Her nephew went to clean out her house, and he found Woman Ochre, the name of the painting. He found it hanging in a really tacky, cheap frame behind her bedroom door. And it was now valued at $160 million.
Oh,
he and her husband were these two very seemingly mild-mannered school teachers, and they are also dead ringers for the original Police sketch.
Oh.
So it's just this shocking story of like, who in the world were these people? It very much is a Wes Anderson kind of scenario, because they are very like highly dysfunctional when you start to dig into them. Wow. And just one of the most puzzling art thefts the last century.
Yeah. Why did they do it, and why that one? I mean, there's just so many questions. Wow.
Yeah, as we dig into it, it gets really interesting as to why they did it.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I'll bet. Who else is on their deep into their next project?
I'm working on a mini series about a true crime that happened in the late 70s in Indianapolis.
Which one's that?
It was a robbery murder that happened on Spring Mill Road in 1977, and
Marjorie Jackson.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
and arson too.
Yeah. The arson turned out to be more of unfortunately for the murderers, it turned out to be more of an alarm bell than a cover-up. The story is the most distinctly Indiana fumbling of just the dumbest possible criminals you can imagine. And it's a story about, it's a story that takes place in the shadow of what was at the time supposed to be what people thought in 1970 was going to be the greatest crime of that year, which was the Tony Karitzis kidnapping. And in the shadow of that was this seemingly innocent looking old woman who had stored about $30 million or so in cash in her house. And this film, or the series, follows this sort of pastiche of people in the city of Indianapolis who either were investigating Marjorie or robbing Marjorie, and how this little house that looked like it had a safari outside of it, she never cut her grass, turned out to house all this cash and little gifts around the house with cards in front of them that read, "To Jesus, Love Marjorie." Her dining room table was set with fine china and ruby goblets and name cards that read, "Jesus, God, Mother Mary, and Marjorie." She was a very eccentric person, and she had a shitload of money. And it's a very fun story. And it is, it's been a ball working on. I've been very lucky in Indianapolis to meet with some of the people who are my characters. Mm-hmm. I've not met any of the people who robbed Marjorie, but some of the people from the prosecutor's office, who either interacted with Marjorie, had Marjorie pull guns on them, who went into her house the day they found her body, all kinds of stuff. One of my favorite stories is one of the guys who went in the morning of, had to use the restroom when he got there, dried his hands off after washing them, pulled a towel out of the hamper, and there was about $250,000 in cash at the bottom of the hamper. It was just everywhere. The cash was absolutely everywhere.
Yeah, she stashed it absolutely everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's the story. It has a title right now, but it's not gonna stick because it's kind of jargon.
Well, I will both these films I'm definitely gonna watch. Okay, so because I'm like lining up my future filmography. Who's next? Ronald, what are you working on?
So I was going into production on my first feature-length horror film, because I've done comedy. My last one was a romantic comedy, and then this COVID happened. So we're just trying to like play the waiting game on seeing when it's safe enough to make. Probably be in the winter, maybe sometime. I'm also working on a couple of other scripts that hoping might be easier to make in this kind of scenario. But it's the film I was working on is kind of a modern take on a slasher film that takes place in the video game journalism area, and how toxic it can be, and it's got some some underlying themes, and a lot of stuff that's happening in the world today that kind of takes place in the film. So so it's a horror film.
Can't wait to see it. I think.
I hope so.
I'm a little, I'm not a great horror person because I can only take so much. So,
Sure.
but I'm interested for sure.
Okay, awesome.
Beth, what are you working on?
So I work for something called the Indiana Environmental Reporter right now. And so all of my stories have to be environmental. And so I've been working on a story about Martinsville for, it feels like ever now. It's come out in, I think, 5 stories. There's going to be a 6th one soon. It's about their Superfund site that's in the middle of their downtown and the water that's been poisoning the people for 20 years. So I followed this one woman, her name is April, and she found out she has a rare, it's called a Gist tumor. It was on her intestine, and she found this when she was 6 months pregnant. And so she just had the baby, and then they just took the tumor out, but she's going to be on chemotherapy pills for the rest of her life. So, you know, happy topics like that. That's what I'm working on. But so I need to do some more B-roll, and then I'm going to start editing everything together. So yeah.
Okay. And Henry, what are you working on?
Yeah, so about like, I'd say in May, which was a couple of months into, you know, lockdown and quarantine, I had started seeing all these people that had accomplished these things from home, you know, writing screenplays, creating things. And I said, oh man, I'm a really big piece of crap. I haven't done anything. So I decided I was going to like sit down, hunker down, and write a screenplay. And so I wrote a new screenplay. And for the first time, I wrote something with not the intention to make it for like $7 in my backyard. Everything else I'd ever written was like, all right, I want to make this thing, but I know I'm going to have to make it. And it was a fun exercise because I was able to kind of let loose, and who knows if it'll ever get made, but it was a great, I mean, I really hope it does, because it's now my favorite thing I've ever written. And it's about a true crime podcaster who is doing a story on an annual retreat. This is fictional, by the way, an annual retreat of amateur internet sleuths. And things go very south. And I've been really fascinated by these true crime podcasts that you know, a lot of these people aren't actually journalists, and they are really irresponsible in their journalism because they just see that everybody else has a podcast. You know, they heard Serial and they said, hey, I can do that. So they go off and they find these cold cases and they start pointing names at people that are innocent publicly. And I thought about, well, what could be the implication of that in real life? And what if somebody tried to retaliate because of that? And it's about a bunch of really irresponsible internet bloggers and a really irresponsible podcaster that get cooped up together, and everybody starts dying. So it's just a fun, believe it or not, I think it'll be a fun time. So
That is an of the moment story for sure.
Yes.
For sure. So kudos to you for getting busy. Yeah, it's interesting. The people who have been completely motivated and productive in this shutdown time, and the others who, in dealing with everything around it, have found it hard to be creative. So
yeah.
I have so many more questions, but I am also going to honor the fact that we are an hour long. So just a couple last things. I have to apologize. I meant to point out that we had closed captioning available on this for our filmmakers and others who are hearing impaired. So my apologies for not pointing that out sooner. But before we go, I want each one of you to, again, repeat the name of your film and what the screenings, remaining screenings are within the IndyFilm Fest, how people can find your film. So Beth, I'm afraid yours has ended. Is that right?
Yes, it ended yesterday.
Yeah. So your film In the Water, did you have, will there be other screenings available of the film outside of IndyFilm Fest?
Yes, it's going to be, we're going to divide it. I divided it into 18 sections, and it's going to be on our website, and we're going to release 2 sections a week for 9 weeks.
Okay. And
so next week.
Okay. Do you want to give us the website name again?
Sure. It's the IndianaEnvironmentalReporter.org.
Okay, great. So we will look for that. Ronald, tell us about the rink and screenings.
So I think it's a part of the Creatures block, which is I'm pretty sure it's all horror films. And it started yesterday. Access was, I believe, was yesterday or the day before. So it's now available through the virtual fest. And it's about 12 minutes, and it's I don't know, pretty fun, I think. Pretty action-packed.
Yeah, I did not realize where it was going.
Great, that's great to hear.
But I really did enjoy it. I did enjoy it.
Thanks.
So okay, so catch that shorts block. Henry, your film.
I'm Henry Johnston, and I'm the writer director of Hum, which is a feature film in the American Spectrum and Hoosier Lens category, and it's kind of a supernatural thriller about this guy and a couple other people that get stuck in the woods because of a mysterious supernatural box. I mean, that's a very poor explanation of the movie, but yes, and it is available until the end of the fest. Yeah, there were no restrictions or anything. So, and hopefully, who knows, but I would love for it to continue to be in several more festivals, and just want to get it out there.
Yeah, hope so too. Sami, Fubar.
Yeah, Fubar is available till midnight on the 20th it's either transitions or transformations. I think it's transformations block.
Mm-hmm.
It was recently not geolocked to the state of Indiana, so you can watch it outside of the city if you're interested. And it will be playing again at the Burbank International Film Festival starting on September 3rd. I don't know if schedule or tickets are available yet for that, but I've been getting their emails and they have the film, so I would assume it's going to be there.
It should, right? It should.
Yeah, it should.
So Allison Ott with your award-winning Love Bugs.
Yeah, so it looks like the Love Bugs is available August 21st. There's going to do a live stream. It's being paired with another film. So it looks like August 21st at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And I think it might be available to stream now as well. But the 21st is going to be the live stream where there'll be a Q&A afterwards. And the film is finishing up its tour because it came out in 2019, and it is going national this fall, but I'm not allowed to say yet specifically which outlet is showing it, but it should be available. I should be available to speak about that within hopefully a couple weeks.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Good.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
How many festivals did the Love Bugs
show
in?
I think 15 or so.
Okay.
Or 20.
It's
It's been a lot of festivals, and then we get some invites from festivals that we hadn't submitted to, which is really cool. And then the other thing I should mention is that we have created a huge educational outreach component with it, a curriculum that's going to be available to teachers for free this fall. Teachers, for elementary school students and middle school students who are looking for content, remote learning content. We've put together a really robust curriculum that they can use with the film.
wonderful. Wow. Well, that's all of you. Kudos to all of you. I hope that you will submit all your future projects to IndyFilm Fest, or something bigger even. Maybe we'll see you out at Sundance. But thank you to all of you. If I didn't say it at the beginning, I'll repeat. I'm with the Can Cinema. We're in the Near East Side neighborhood of Windsor Park. We are a brand new art house theater and restaurant, the Brasserie, which was opening and then it wasn't. So we will, when it is safe and right to do so, we will open. In the meantime, cancanindy.com is where you can find what we're up to. And we are always up to a lot, including next week. You want to talk about stories of filmmaking. We've got Michael Schwartz and Tyler Nielsen of Peanut Butter Falcon joining us for an evening to talk about their filmmaking adventures, and they are adventures. So I hope people will register. You can go to our website, cancanindy.com, and learn more and get registered for our virtual evening with them. But thank you to all of you. Good luck, and I hope that we meet again often, and I can't wait to see your next projects. Good luck to all of you. And thanks to IndyFilm Fest for hosting us today. And go watch the movies, everyone, if you haven't seen them already. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks. Thank you.
Can't wait for Can to open.
Yeah, that sounds
Seriously.
awesome.
Thank you. I am right there with you. It's such a beautiful theater, and it's ready to go. We are ready to go. It just looks like because we were actually literally ready to go. So it's there. It's ready to go. We have 3 theaters. For those of you who don't know, it's 3 theaters, 35, 45, and 145 seats. The restaurant will be, the chef is Abby Maris, who, of course, a Bluebeard, multiple James Beard nominee. So she was just really excited to start up her second project, being sort of a European inspired bistro fare. So, because film and conversation go together, and food and drinks do too. So we'll get there. But we're having a lot of fun being innovative in the virtual space. So it's as with all of you, I'm sure you've all found that you've had to develop competencies and new ways of thinking. So
For sure.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Neil, very much for being the captain in the background. Are you still there? Hitting stop now. Okay. He's coming back on, I think. Let's see. Yeah, so thanks for submitting to IndyFilm Fest. There's also Heartland Film Festival in Indianapolis, but and they also do an Indie Shorts Festival. So if you've never submitted to those as well. Thank you, Neil.
Thanks, Neil.
Thanks, Neil.
I tried to help in the background, but
I appreciate it. A
few of you were like struggling with film titles. I'm like, oh, I got it. Don't worry.
I so appreciate it because right there, it's like deer in the headlights. It's like, yes, of course. Really cool. And Betsy West, of course, and Ryan White, but you just don't, when it's just right, you're deer in the headlights. So what I really wanted to get to, Neil, was the question that you put in there. What genre?
Yeah, it came in a little late.
Would love to have done that because that's kind of a great kind of a turnabout question. So
What was the question?
Tyler asked, where is it? What genre would be the hardest for you to dive into, and would you eventually do it, and how? So, I mean,
Well, the obvious answer is pornography, of course.
Could have been interesting, but
wow. Well, so Sammy, how long are you in Oxford? How long is your partner's degree?
Well, it was only supposed to. I mean, we signed a lease and everything, so we'll be here till my visa is till April of 2024. But
okay.
To an extent, it's based on Maggie, my partner's PhD. So once that's done, we'll know a bit more about where we go and how and all that sort of thing. I don't know if we're going to stay in even Oxford the whole time. We may move back to London. We were there before, but it's been really I know the sound, especially if you're from the Midwest, but it's hard to empathize with this statement, but having a backyard has really saved my brain during quarantine. Because if we were in London or if we were back in New York, which is where we were before London, it would have been 3 rooms and one of us would be dead. It would have just been, someone would have been knifed. So we're really lucky to have had this backyard and a dog, and we did all the quarantine stuff. Yeah, we got a garden. We got
yeah. That's what they call it, not a yard.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they get a lot of funny looks. We get a lot of funny looks. But yeah, so it's been really nice. You lived in Cambridge?
I lived in Cambridge, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that link is hard. It's really weird. Like, there's nothing in the US, there's no real connection between like Harvard and Yale, really, other than they're just two really famous schools. But here, the like pipeline between the two is, it's really, that was a big culture shock of how big a deal. Like once you're in Oxford, you're upper class in the UK. It's not a money thing, it's a status of, oh, you went to Oxford, oh look at you. Yeah.
In which college within Oxford?
She's at Teddy Hall.
Okay.
Which the only cool thing about that is that they had a collection of books from Terry Jones, who was an alumnus. And when he died this year, they had like a big sort of thing for Terry Jones. It was really cool. But
Oh, that's cool.
that was, other than that, I have no idea what Teddy Hall is or what that means or anything like that.
But there is significance given to basically which college within the university
Right.
you were
Yeah,
in.
like Christchurch is the big one. And that's where they shot a lot of Harry Potter. And there's actually a bridge of sighs here between two buildings that you walk underneath. And then where they shot the Butter Bar is right there as well. And that bar is actually really cool, that pub, because it's where they shot the interior of the Butter Bar in one of the Harry Potter movies. But outside they have a big plaque that reads, "This is where Bill Clinton inhaled or exhaled," or whatever. So it's a really cool, it didn't inhale. Yeah. But yeah, it's a cool experience. It's just one of those things where like the experience of being in the UK during this time and then looking back at the US is really sort of, it feels like I'm having an out of body experience, because I talk about the US in kind of the first person, like the way things are here, but that's not right because I'm not there, I'm somewhere else. It's kind of an odd turn of events. So.
And such a different perspective looking at your home country from the outside.
Yeah, we get fed in the US this narrative about Boris as if he's like some Trump light. It couldn't be further from the truth. He's basically a Democrat. He just happens to have these tendencies that make him sort of boorish and like overbearing. But the conservatives in this country are more like the Democrats. The hard line right is as close to the Republicans as you can get, but they're just like this much of the government. This tiny thing. That's the weirdest part, man. Like when they complain about conservatives here, I'm like, you guys got it too good, man. You got it too good.
I have to hop off onto another call, but thanks,
you
Allison,
so
much.
Yeah.
Same here, actually.
Lovely to see you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
I'm going to take off as well. I have to go pick up some groceries from
All right.
an order. But thank you all for having me. I really
Thanks,
appreciate it. It's good meeting you all.
We are so grateful
Yeah,
to all of
care.
you for giving
Thank
us
you.
the time, and it was fascinating. So thank you. Good luck, and hope to see you guys all soon.
I can't
I
wait
know.
to check out Can.
Oh, I can't wait
Yeah.
to have you.
Yeah, I can't wait. Bye now.
All right.
See
We'll
ya.
see you. Bye-bye.
Hi, everybody.
Bye. Thanks, Neil, so very much.
I emailed Abby. I have a recording of this. I hit
Okay.
a little late, which I'm sorry. We didn't miss any content, but we missed some of the intro, what was going on. But so we have that, but this will stay up like through the end of the festival. So you can continue to point people to that page. It stays free and they can watch it whenever.
Okay.
They obviously can't ask questions, but
Other than that. So the poster behind you, it reminds me of the film Hank and Asha.
It is, I bought it off a Chinese artist in Central Park. It's not real. It's, what's that Russian artist, Leonid Afremov or something like that? It's, it's kind of like his, but like, no. Anyways, I bought it in Central Park.
That's cool.
I need to stretch, but I just haven't.
I don't know. Did you ever see the film Hank and Asha?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of that film. It was, in fact, I recently rewatched it. It was on one of the streaming services. We showed it at Heartland when I was there, but they shot it in. It's a developing relationship between a guy in New York and a film student in Prague, and they send videos back and forth, and that's how the whole movie is that. So that reminded me of the movie poster.
Yeah, I like it. I need to get it stretched over canvas or over like, a frame, but it's, I don't know. It's really the only piece of like non-movie related art that I have. So. All right, I got to take off, but
yeah, thank you.
And we'll be in touch.
All right, we'll be in touch, Neil. Thanks, and good luck with the rest of the festival.
Thank you.
All right, take care.